Is brought to you by the Belize Bank, our country, your bank, and SMART, bringing people together.
Welcome to Open Your Eyes.
Start your morning right. I am William Neal.
And I'm Marlene Cuellar, and thank you for joining us this morning.
Very beautiful Tuesday morning, a little bit damp.
Yes, it is. And there was a bit of rain last night, but it is absolutely windy.
Beautiful day to drive. Let the windows down and let your hair out.
Natural air conditioning, yeah.
It's a beautiful, it truly is a beautiful day. And of course, we're going to be tuning in very shortly with our Met service to see exactly what the weather will be like for today. And we have Francisca Wellington on the line. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I am pretty okay. And you?
Good too, thank you.
The weather, there was a little bit of rain and a lot of winds.
Oh, yes, yes. We had showers along the coast from the north to south last night. We're having a little lull right now, and I'm expecting showers to redevelop along the coast by mid-morning.
Okay.
And move inland areas, and then we'll see a recurrence of that tonight and tomorrow. And then on Thursday, I'm seeing showers overall decreasing, and better weather for Friday and Saturday.
Okay.
The winds are out of the east. It's only blowing 5 to 15 knots, but during the showers and thunderstorms is when we get the gustiness.
Okay.
And overall, we're having choppy seas, but again, during these gustiness, the seas become rough, so I have a small craft caution out. And for temperatures, 88 along the coast, 92 inland and 78 in the hills. That's for this afternoon. Tomorrow morning, 75 Fahrenheit along the coast, 72 inland, and 68 in the hills.
Okay. And you gave us a bit of the extended forecast, but what can we expect at least for tomorrow?
Well, we'll be seeing showers reoccurring again as early as tonight along the coast, tomorrow morning. And should see a little bit more tomorrow morning from what I'm observing.
Okay.
That's for the entire country, but especially along the coast and over the south.
And what's happening in the tropics?
Okay, we still have Nadine out there. She's about 435 miles southwest of the Azores, and winds of 45 miles per hour moving west at 6 miles per hour.
Okay.
Otherwise, we don't have anything else to worry about at this time.
All right.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Francisca.
Welcome.
Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
All right. And Nadine seems to have been out there for an eternity.
I know. She's a very persistent hurricane.
So, but we're glad that on this side, all we'll have is some little rains and some gusts of wind.
All right. Well, it is time for us now to move into our eye-opener.
And our eye-opener for today, September 25th, 2012, is as follows. Think wrongly, if you please, but in all cases, think for yourself. One of the many things that drive parents crazy about their children is that children like to think for themselves. Parents do not like that. Most of the time, parents do not understand why children believe as they do. They may also feel threatened when the children do not see things the right way. That is, the parents' way. Parents have experience. They believe children do not. Parents know the dangers and traps in life. Children seem not to care. Parents believe that if children are left to their own devices, they will destroy themselves. Parents need to realize the difference between discipline and thinking, disobedience and thinking, disrespect and thinking. Children are just people living through a smaller body. They must learn to express themselves, to understand who they are, and grow into who they are through their own thoughts. Just because your children do not think as you do doesn't mean they are wrong. Ideas are children of the mind. My children have children. Wow. A great eye-opener there in terms of continuing pretty much in the same vein of yesterday's. Talking about children and the rights to speak, and now, of course, the right to think and express those thoughts independently, even if they go against what parents may believe at that particular juncture. And it's important that you provide the space for children to understand that it's okay for them to think. And I like the opening quote the most. Simply think wrongly if you must, but most of all, think for yourself. Because I think so many of us play it safe because we want to follow the crowd or fit in or feel like a part of so many other groups or whatever, that we don't spend the time to actually do us and do the thinking for ourselves. And if there are consequences to be had, at least you feel better knowing that you did it your way, as cliche as it sounds.
Yeah, and I think what happens oftentimes is just outside of being able to fit in, I think people just become comfortable relying on others to do all the analysis that they think is required for any given situation. We see that a lot in the participation in our country. People don't take the time to be able to really understand what's happening. They just, go by what this one is saying or that one is saying, whether it's a political party, whether it's a particular media house, whether it's, your parents or your family or whoever else it is. They just kind of follow along the lines. But I think the eye-opener really kind of reinforces what we spoke about yesterday as well. Talking about giving children the space to be able to express themselves. And this one just kind of adds on to it, a very important point, that understanding that opinion might be different from yours, and you do have to accept that.
And I like the fact that it talks about thinking, not equating disrespect, not equating so many other things that parents immediately latch on to. You're supposed to be spouting your parents' politics, your parents' ideas. You're not supposed to be an independent soul. And very often it's ironic that even, when they become young adults, parents still expect that they'll be able to say, this is what you're supposed to do because I am experienced and I have this and I know better and all of that.
And they might, quite rightly, they might be trying to guide you away from some awful decision that will cause you a lot of difficulties. But I think what is necessary to understand is that having people, young people especially, have that space to make the decision, suffer the consequences of that decision, and learning the lesson along the way as well is what is crucial in our own life lessons. We can only protect people to a certain extent, as hard as that is to accept.
And brings to mind Khalil Gibran's children are not your children, they're sons and daughters of the earth. That you can't shape their ideas, you can't touch the future, only they can, and that you have to give them that space. And I think once parents learn how to let go, love and let go, that's the important lesson, even for parents.
All right. That's our eye-opener for today. Of course, our reminder for today is that there will not be any Be the Next Superstar show at the Bliss tonight. So, we don't have tickets available. You can't go down to the Bliss tonight. You have to catch us next week when we resume our normal schedule. And of course, that's just because with the September festivities, we weren't able to have the Bliss for tonight. So that's why we're going on a momentary pause. But next week, you can definitely catch us back again at the Bliss on our regular Tuesday night.
All right, but jumping into our show for today, of course, the super bond payment was due last week. And we know what the update is there. Government managed to pay 50%. And today, going forward, we're going to be sitting down and talking with members of the business community to see exactly what's their perspective. So don't go anywhere. We'll have members of the Belize Chamber of Commerce and Industry joining us for this conversation. We'll be right back with more Open Your Eyes after these messages.
I love it, and I know the kids will love it too.
This looks really nice.
But can we afford it?
Well, there's only one way to find out.
Trying to figure out if you can afford a new home? Get a step closer to owning your dream home with a home residential mortgage loan from the Belize Bank.
This will be your monthly payment.
We can do this.
Yes, we can.
Visit your local Belize Bank branch to learn more about our home residential mortgage. Home ownership made easy.
The Belize Theatre Company presents Trevor Roan's unforgettable comedy, Smile Orange. Playing September 27th, 28th, and 29th at the Bliss starting at 8 p.m. Tickets are priced at $20, available at the Bliss or call 227-6273. Proceeds in favor of Hand in Hand Ministries, sponsored by the National Institute of Culture and History. For mature audiences only.
I'm not perfect, but I just try to do what's right to respect myself. I'm Johan Blake, the Beast, encouraging you to live up, love, protect, and respect yourself.
Live up, shout, live up,
When life keeps moving at a super fast pace, you need technology that'll keep you up to speed. Introducing the new and improved Smart Dongle. Convenient, reliable, high-speed mobile internet. Now available at an amazing promotional rate of only $135. Don't be left behind. Smart brings the world to your fingertips.
Smart, bringing people together.
Bye. When you know when you broke the law to drink out here? What? Why would I talk about? We do this all the time.
Know the law. No person shall drink any liquor on public road, drain, culvert, street, sidewalk, or other public place other than a licensed bar, restaurant, or nightclub, except on the occasion of any public dance, ball, celebration, or entertainment, provided that the liquor in any bottle, glass, metal container is placed in a plastic paper or styrofoam container. Persons failing to comply will pay a fine of up to $100 and undertake 50 hours of community service.
Bye, thanks to you, man. We will find before getting in trouble with the law.
This message was brought to you by the Police Department and this station.
And welcome back. It's now 14 minutes away from 7 o'clock, and as promised before the break, we're sitting down with representatives from the Belize Chamber of Commerce and Industry. We have Kay Menzies, President, and Carlo Habet, Councillor, to discuss the super bond and the business perspective. Good morning and welcome to the show.
Good morning and thank you for having us.
Yeah, good morning. Thanks,
and
guys.
good morning, Belize.
Yes.
Now, let's start off first of all. What has the conversation been like at the Chamber with regards to this particular issue and how important it is?
It's critically important. I think we all agree to that. The super bond has been a topic for us from well before it became a renegotiation issue, in that everything we do was, as any news headline will tell you, was overshadowed by the fact that we had this massive debt to pay. And it's nothing new. It's an amalgamation of all the debt that we've accumulated over decades, all bundled into one instrument. Well, not all, about half of it bundled into one instrument. And this had to be of concern to the business sector simply because so much of our tax revenue was being spent on that. And so much of that tax revenue that should have been spent on other capital projects used to develop the economy, that it was one of those things you wish would go away, but same like your house mortgage, you can't just wish it away, you have to figure out a way around it. And so yes, it's been a serious topic for some years now for us.
Yeah. Now, obviously, one of the issues has been that the business community has always been the one that so many people run to. When the business community is feeling a crunch, especially in the face of such a big issue, how do you respond to, you know, the local demands and at the same time your own business, survival kind of instinct at the same time?
Difficult and getting more difficult in that we are obliged to pay our taxes as members of society. The fact is, though, when you get to the point where, and many businesses have gone under in making these choices, when you're deciding whether to pay your taxes or your employees, whether to pay your taxes or your utility bills, things are getting very dark indeed when that happens to you as a business. And we've seen instances of businesses that have sort of fallen afoul of the law because they couldn't cope with the tax payments. And when the interest penalties and everything hit, it pretty much drove them into bankruptcy. There's several reasons for that, but it brings home to anybody who's watching and willing to learn from it that you have to take the matter seriously and recognize that if business can't survive, taxes can't be paid. If taxes can't be paid, the super bond, your basic lifestyle, your roads won't be repaired, your police can't do their work, all the basic necessities of society that government provides won't be available. So you have to find a balance whereby you're able to do business, you're able to keep your job, and you're able to do those parts without it becoming so burdensome that you have to decide between one or the other.
Now, obviously, anybody who lives in Belize understands that things are very tight right now in the country. And even the Prime Minister, when he delivered his budget, spoke about tightening the belt and kind of just being a bit more smart about how we use and spend our money. Obviously, for the business sector, that obviously has some implications. People won't spend as much, or maybe even as a business yourself, to be able to cope with keeping up with the supplies that you need to give to the people. How has the Chamber been working with the business sector, those who are your members, to be able to help them cope through this time? And how have they been faring off, actually? We should start there.
Generally, it's been rocky. The surveys we've done have shown that businesses are having as rough a time as you would think they're having. And what we found is we've been trying to provide training opportunities, learning opportunities for our members, wherein if you've ever heard, our motto is the Triple C philosophy. We want to capacitate, connect, and champion. If we can, advocacy obviously is a key part of what we do. So we sit there and we discuss with the government ways to try and mitigate the hardship that our business people are feeling. But at the same time, sometimes it's a matter of learning a little bit more about financial management, or trying to get connections to find more customers, or if you can make that leap to export and find a way to do that. We've been trying to provide all of those to members who have come to us. There is no perfect answer for anything, but to me, the member that goes out looking for it, we do try to provide whatever assistance we can. Unfortunately, not financial, but everything otherwise in terms of advice.
In terms of those who either have to close up shop or on the brink of it, is it just a matter of financial issues that they're facing now?
Large part. Not. It would be oversimplifying to say it's only that, but in large part, what we've encountered in terms of the stories we've heard is sometimes the financing was too expensive, they couldn't meet their interest payments, or the tax burden somebody missed something somewhere along the line and the tax burden became too heavy, or quite simply, it does boil down a lot of the time to finance or financial management issues.
Now, just to bring Carlo in, as one of the younger members of the Chamber, what has been the engagement to make sure that for so many younger people, the issue is how fully do you understand the ramifications of the super bond? What has that been like to make sure that there's full understanding as a young businessman of the super bond and what it means?
Yeah, well, I think kind of like he mentioned, it's like this overarching theme that we can't seem to get away from. I know the other was, it gets to a point where it's ridiculous. Like, I was out maybe like a month when the negotiations were kind of like hitting like a pitch. And this guy was like, oh yeah, I can't go out this week, super bond. And I was like, okay. And then like shortly after that, I mean, I heard like 3 times in a row from like another guy about, oh, you know, this is my daughter, super bond. And I was like, okay. And then I was like, I was just waiting for someone to say something like, you know, I got shot in the leg by the super bond. It's kind of all-encompassing. It's hard not to come to grips with it. I think some people may even, and kind of maybe to flip the question a bit, some people may use it too much as an excuse for why they can't do things. And I think he mentioned, yes, that the business community struggles a bit financially. And I hope they don't hate me for saying this, but I think we're all a bit of a culprit too of mismanagement to a certain extent. And I think when times were good, you know, it was easier for certain mismanagement practices to kind of just, you know, float on by. Now that things are tight, we realize, okay, well, we were doing a couple things wrong. We need to kind of readjust. Now that's all of us, not just the business community, but I think, you know, regular consumers need to tighten their belt. And you're seeing this correction, you know, everything's like troughs and peaks. So this is essentially the bottom, and we have to kind of correct. The market has to correct itself. I think that's what you're seeing essentially. What we are actually asking as well, though, is that, you know, the same way that us consumers are tightening our belts, and the business people are tightening their belts. If we're going to get some relief from the super bond, which, you know, we're in support of because we need some relief, we think that government should tighten their belt as well. And we just feel like, you know, from one administration to the next, there always seems to be just a bit of extra expenditure that could always be curtailed a bit. And, you know, we just want to see, you know, we have some specific points we've released, like fleet management, for instance. But we just like to see, you know, not just us, but everyone kind of do their part, and not just always look and say, well, what's Superbond going to, you know, do to me? Like, well, what am I going to do about the situation, you know?
Yeah. Now you bring up a valid point, and I think, you know, even jokingly saying the super bond shot your leg, I think it is realistically how people think. We hear of the issue so much, we don't necessarily all understand how it affects us. We know government has this huge amount of money that we've never even imagined to pay, and they're saying they can't pay it. Do you think that you find the same thing within the business community as well, that people aren't quite understanding how this may affect them? Especially when we spoke about the different scenarios that were put forth and facing a possible default.
Yeah, I think there is a question, there is a fear generally that this is serious and this is a very, very big storm cloud for us. Direct impact is always a question. A lot of the business folks out there might not see where directly it'll affect my business or your business. What we do find is that there's a lot of anger when it comes down to, I have to pay these bills and I'm doing this because of this monster, this amorphous monster out there. But there's not an understanding, for example, if we don't pay our debts, we become an international pariah. And this is one of the reasons that the Chamber has said from day one, we must pay our debts. How we restructure them is the question, but the bill must be paid. Because if you simply stand up and say, I'm not going to pay, that's it. We're totally not going to pay this $550 million US. Everybody in the international community who's your friend right now will become not your friend very quickly.
They'll turn their backs.
They will turn their backs and they will wash their hands of you. And this is something that does affect individual businesses that deal both out and in over the border. If you're exporting, you're going to need credit, and creditors are going to say, don't know, the political risk here is high. If you're getting investment, again, they're gonna sit there and say, well, I don't know. At the end of it, I might not be able to repatriate my investment. One way or another, it's along the lines of your neighbor borrowing $10 from you and sort of crossing the street every time you see him afterwards because he doesn't want to pay you the $10. If he comes back to you for another $10, what's going to happen? You're probably going to use a few choice words on him and tell him about that first $10. That's the $550 million version of that, US dollar version of that. So there is a direct impact on all of us should this super bond not be paid. Now, what's really heartening is when you see all the news items and everything, I think the general public understands that this bill must be paid. I think the anger is that it exists, and the issue is how will we pay it? We know we can't pay it in the current increments, so sitting down with the bankers and saying, can we do something to make the payments more bearable is what has to happen.
I think that's been one of it's been one of the analogies that people have used the most. You know, it's like you borrow from the bank and you tell them I can't pay back, and you have to go back and find some way to figure out how you're going to pay it. When we were, and we still are, in the negotiation phase, when we initiated the negotiation phase and put forward the first 3 scenarios, there was a lot of reaction to it. I remember having a conversation here where I asked the question if it's not just Belize playing hardball, and whether we're in a position to be playing hardball. The Chamber never made a specific comment on it. Now that we know that it has been rejected, can you say anything in terms of what what your impression was of the scenarios?
I think it's along the lines of what you said. It certainly woke up the investors. If you saw the reactions in the international media, the investors who were quiet before, you weren't seeing headlines from them, you weren't seeing quotes or anything, all of a sudden were going, what? If it was meant to be an attention grabber, it certainly was. If it was meant to be a hardball tactic, it certainly came across that way. Whether or not it worked, apologies.
Yes. It's time to wake up, kid.
It is time to wake up, yes. It's time for all of us to wake up. Whether or not it was intended to be a hardball tactic, that's the way it came across. Now, the issue here is going forward. You have another 60 days. It seems that the negotiations are starting to have a little bit of movement. There's been a little bit of give on both sides. What we need to focus on as a country is how to make this happen in such a way that we end up benefiting and we don't end up as international pariahs in the process also.
Now, Carlo raised a very good point that in hard times, that's when you do all the tightening, and obviously lessons are learned. What would you say collectively in terms of the chamber itself? What are some of the lessons that you think your members have learned besides better management practices being put in place to actually make sure that going forward that they're able to survive?
Carlo's exactly right, and I remember reading about the Great Depression in the States, where so many lessons were learned that carried forward into what happened over the next several decades. When you have all the money at your disposal, you don't have to trim the fat. You don't have to worry about the gas prices. You don't have to worry about leaving on the lights at home at night. When things become thin and you have to count your pennies, you figure out the best way, the most efficient way to dispose of those pennies. Whether you decide to use more efficient lighting in your home, or at a business level, do you really need to have X number of items in your stock? Do you need to have so much inventory? Do you need to use this process in order to produce the item that you're looking to sell? Do you need, sad to say, but do you need so many employees? And that's one of the sad decisions that a lot of businesses have had to make. But it does build efficiency into the system, and it takes out the waste of necessity. It has to happen. And the unfortunate thing is that when that happens, we have to find a way to set safety nets so that whoever loses out in those efficiencies, it has a place to land. So, for example, if you are a small employer who has 5 employees and business is such and things are such that you only need 3, it would be nice if those remaining 2 have somewhere to go. And what Carlos spoke of is something that we've been talking about at different levels. If we could redispose our income, not just the business side, but the government side, redistribute our income in such a way that we provide the safety net, allow people not just to go somewhere else and find a job, but also to find a way to get into business on their own. If we could find a way to make government more efficient without causing undue pain. We have to remember we have a 25% or so unemployment figure, very high rate of unemployment. The last thing we want to do is increase that rate or even keep it static. We have to work on decreasing that rate. How do we do that? We need to, those businesses in existence need to find ways not just to better themselves and get through this, batten down the hatches, if you will, but we also need to, as businesses, as a business organization, find a way to facilitate business such that Carlo wants to open a business of his own. We all should be helping him, because if he gets in business, he's creating more employment, and that's more customers for the rest of us.
Now, one of the things that, as I listened to you talk and reflecting on what Carlo had to say as well, is that for businesses, it seems like there's a tightrope act that businesses must, at this point, in terms of engaging with the government, to say that we're not against what needs to be done, but how do you force the hand of government to say, this is where we'd like to see you go? Because I don't think that has been a part of the conversation in terms of what will be the restructuring and the changes within government to facilitate this process. Of course, everybody gets really antsy when they hear IMF, but that is what would come in with a very draconian kind of approach.
Yeah.
Now, has the business, the chamber in particular, approached government to look at the way forward in terms of what restructuring needs to take place?
We've spoken a little bit to it in terms of, for example, we sent the PM a letter on the most recent budget, the budget that's now in effect, discussing increased efficiencies. We're very heartened to see that the NTUCB has also sent in a position that on the restructuring specifically, but that says, well, we need to fix these issues. Yeah. This is a conversation that's ongoing. It's been going on since before the issue of the restructuring came up. We've been asking for things like tax reform, increased efficiency in government, which doesn't necessarily mean cutting costs. Sometimes it means putting what you're spending, put it to better use, demand a better return on it. To look at, as Carlo said, fleet management is one of the most visible things that everybody latches onto, but it is a fact that we could do better there.
You're talking about the number of cars, or
number of vehicles, way they're used. For example, if you are a public servant just going to Belmopan, why shouldn't you have a nice bus that you can get aboard at a specific place in the morning in Belize City, get off at your destination in Belmopan, nice bus, but get off at your destination in Belmopan, work your day in the office, and be driven home at night collectively in a bus. It would be so much better than 20, 30 vehicles doing the same job for the same amount of people. If we had a motor pool at the other end, then you've gotten your bus ride up to work, and then if you need to run somewhere during the day, you can sign a vehicle out of the fleet pool, whatever. Fuel is always a discussion, So there's several ways that the government can be much more efficient, more visibly efficient. We in the public want to see that our money is cared for. And as you said, William, you mentioned IMF. It's better that we do it before somebody from outside comes in and does it.
Now, it's interesting that you mentioned some of the things that you have, because quite recently the Research Center did a poll that essentially saying a lot of what you have been saying in this conversation so far, that the majority of Belizeans do want the super bond to be paid. They do want people to make the payments that are necessary. They do want government to cut to minimize their spending, and obviously don't want an increase in taxes. However, when it came to the tightening of the belt for government, what they had identified as the main priority for them was contract workers. Which I really found that interesting for many different reasons. But what's your thought on that? Does the Chamber have a position in terms of the amount of people that government are hiring for, especially for government jobs that people are employed for in government?
Well, I think the Chamber, as a body that employs a lot of people, we don't want to see more unemployment. I think he mentioned that 25% is high. I mean, that's incredibly high. That's double anything that would be considered high anywhere else. So it's extremely high. We don't necessarily want government to just be laying off people when they could be doing more work. I think what we're saying is we want them to work more efficiently. You could put people to better work, more work, spread them out, maybe make another division or two that makes sense. What we were talking about too was coordination among these bodies, because a lot of times, all of these different departments are like silos and they don't talk to each other and they have no idea what's going on, and so you have ridiculous fees and waiting times between one and the other. Business is just not elegant, in my opinion, and this is something that we also discussed. It's not just about government saying, okay, we're going to cut this and cut that and tighten our belt symbolically. We do want to see some certainty and some predictability in the environment, and I think that's one thing that people don't really mention, and something that people don't see as a side effect of the super bond. This negotiation issue is that we don't know where we're going, and investors in the outside don't know where we're going. And I may be shot in the leg by super bond for saying this, but if I was an outside investor, I would not invest in Belize. I'll just put that out there, because you know what? If I'm looking into Belize and I'm from some other country, I'm thinking, what does Belize have to offer? There's like 200 odd countries in the world. We're one little country that happens to have a really great strategic location right there, Central America, Caribbean. But at the same time, right now, we don't seem to care about what people think about us outside. We don't seem to care enough about making predictability and certainty, which is a big word for investors, certainty. We want to know that, hey, if I come here, that it's going to be the same 10 years from now. It's not saying it has to be the most banana republic like place. It's just saying that we need to know what's going to happen in 10 years, and we don't. And I think if they could just kind of come out and say, in a nice kind of just, hey, it's going to be all right. Because they've never said, it's going to be all right. We're going to stay, we're going to do,
And in fact, what you're saying is talking about the economic growth in itself. I mean, the super bond was created because we couldn't make payments then. The negotiation now is because we can't make the payments now, and at the next payment, we don't know if we'll be able to make those payments once again. You spoke about the lessons learned from the Great Depression. Do you see that we are taking in the lessons from this particular experience at this point?
We're not going to know. We're not going to know immediately if we're taking it in, to be honest with you. I see businesses doing what they need to do, and the ones that are surviving and thriving are the ones clearly that are learning the lessons. So later on, when the storm has blown over and we're back to sunshine and calm, you're going to see from that who has learned the lessons along the way. But in the midst of the class, it's difficult to say which student is going to get the A. Having said all that, though, one of the lessons in the Great Depression and the following wars that came along in that economy was everybody succeeded by working together. Now, we just talked about the efficiencies in the public service, and I know I've been made aware that the Ministry of the Public Service is working very hard to do some restructuring of its own there. But and Carlo mentioned that if you go to start up a business, the effort is way more than it should be. You should be able to walk into, and we've said this to the government, you should be able to walk into a place or even go online, fill out a form online, and 24 hours later, you're good to go. You're registered, you're ready, you're in startup phase. But right now, the cost and the red tape in starting up a business is so hard that it's almost a deterrent. So people are doing business, but not officially. Small business is the backbone of any economy, and if you can't bring small business in and into the formal economy and make it a part of what you're trying to accomplish, you're not going to get very far. Now, our fellow citizens out there, remember our public servants are our fellow citizens. Some of them understand this, and some of them don't. And if we can't work together, we can't get through the storm as easily. Yes, we can get through. Carlo will be over there, I'll be over there, you'll have been blown up on the beach over on the other side. But if we work together and we decide, guess what, this is one great nation. We just spent all of September talking about what a great nation this is. And it is a great nation. We just need to act the part. I spent the weekend in a tourist destination in Belize and got to talking to an American who told me what a wonderful country this is. This is such an amazing country. They absolutely love it, and started to outline all the potential we have in so many areas, and we just have to live up to it. That's all. It's easy.
Well, we're going to go ahead and take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll jump into more of this discussion. So don't go anywhere. Open your eyes. We'll be right back.
Maxwell MS Limited is now open for all your medical supply needs. With an unlimited array of medical supplies and equipment, Maxwell MS Limited is the place to go. We have items such as wheelchairs, pressure monitors, commodes, canes, power chairs, dual care diabetic and blood pressure testing kits, digital thermometers, folic catheters, and the list goes on. Plus, our experienced medical staff provides consultation, nursing, pharmacy, laboratory, clinical, and EKG services. Located at number 28 St. Thomas Street, Belize City. Maxwell MS Limited, offering quality and affordable medical supplies and services.
One in every 10 persons in the Caribbean has diabetes or high blood sugar. Persons with diabetes are more likely to suffer from heart attacks, strokes, kidney disease, and amputations. Get the message. Exercise regularly, eat a healthy diet, monitor and control your blood sugar, and attend your doctor.
When you're smart, everything comes easy. And I go anyway, walk anyway, talk anyway, sing anyway, knowing that me got me smartphone. I gone!
Roam with Smart. Now prepaid roaming is available in parts of Mexico, including Mexico City, Yucatan, and Quintana Roo.
Smart, bringing people together.
Twinkle little star, how I wonder what you are. 2 sultry cigarettes.
Know the law. No license holder shall sell or deliver or allow any person to sell or deliver any description of liquor to any person under the age of 18. Failure to comply can result in your license being revoked and a fine of up to $1,000. This message was brought to you by the police department and this station.
Our country.
Our country.
Everybody. Our country.
Our country.
Our country.
Our country.
Our country.
The Belize Bank Limited. Our country, your bank.
And welcome back. And of course, we're continuing our conversation with representatives of the Belize Chamber of Commerce, President K. Menzies, and Councillor Carlo Habet. But of course, I know you had a question you wanted to ask them.
Now, jumping into what going forward, because that's where everybody seems to want to go directly. But an important part of that is having a sensible and sober discussion about how private and public sector can partner and make a comprehensive and very open plan that people can participate and fully understand. That we won't necessarily see the results in the immediate future. There's no quick fix, but going forward for the next 5 years, 10 years in terms of the development. How do you see that issue and the need for such an open discussion to take place at this point?
It's critical. In some ways it has begun. If you guys remember, the PM had a forum last November, a business forum, and pulled together something like 300 business people from all over the country and all sectors. And at that forum, he also put together, towards the end of the forum, he also put together a committee that's now become known as the Economic Development Council, which consists of literally half public sector and half private sector key CEOs from key ministries, Ministry of Economic Development, Ministry of Investment, for example, and the CEOs, the Prime Minister's own CEO. There's a 5-on-5 balance there, and on the private sector side of things, there is a representation for services, for agri-productive, banking, road construction. So from that point of view, the discussion at that level is occurring. We're talking CEO to business level, is occurring, and it has been to a large extent a trust building exercise, in that everybody there had to begin to understand each other, and we both have resentments on both sides, and we both have issues on both sides, and we both have misconceptions on both sides. And so in terms of from last December when that council started meeting to now, there's been a great deal of improvement in terms of the need, understanding the need for that partnership. Whether or not that partnership is occurring, it has to happen through every single level that you talked about. But the idea there is that a strategy has to be built up, a national plan. We have Horizon 2030 in effect, for example, but we don't have anything that's development oriented to the point where you say you give a formal recognition within the development plan that the private sector must thrive in order for the rest of it to follow. Like when I opened up when I began a little while ago, I said, if government doesn't get its taxes, a lot of things don't happen. The idea is that for a private sector oriented economy is what we're supposed to be if we want to grow, if we want to meet those debt obligations, if we want to build our roads, if we want to. The discussions at the Economic Development Council level are recognizing that there are policy decisions that the government has to take in certain, with regard to particularly some productive sector industries, and that right there has begun to make a small difference, but we have a long way to go in that.
Now, continuing with that, with the same question and what you've said, a lot of that has been closed door sessions. When will it spill out into the public domain for people to actually see that there is some progress? Because I think one of the big elephants in the room is that you talk about the perceptions. People see the public sector as largely inefficient and unwilling to change certain perspectives. They may see the business community as gouging the general population and all of, but we don't see any kind of a synergy where we're looking at reforms on both sides and where the public can, especially when it comes to economics, where is the glass half full or half empty, and two people can look at the same situation and come to a different analysis of it. When do we see the public actually, being privy to what is happening?
I think two things are in the works. I'm not sure of timing on one of them, but what's in the works is the PM's second forum as a follow-up. That should be happening in late October or early November. And that will give an update as to what has been accomplished based on the issues brought up at the last forum. So that's one. The other is that the council itself is discussing and will most likely be doing sort of a PR discussion, getting out into the public on the media airwaves to discuss what it is they're doing. There is an attempt to formalize that council a little bit more, because the PM put it together as an ad hoc advisory committee, and now I think everybody recognizes that there is a need to formalize it and make it into something much more, even more strategic than it is right now. And that's going to require some outside assistance from other countries that have done it, to show us, our version. You don't reinvent the wheel, you refine it, you make it better. How we can do it in such a way that we do guide that partnership the way it needs to go. That will probably happen before the end of the year, but I'm not putting my head on the block as to timing. But the thing that needs to happen also is that both sides need to start discussing what it is they're doing, because From our side, you're right, there is a perception that business, they therefore take my money, and it's not so. If you compare prices in Chetumal to prices in Belize City, there are a lot more issues behind what makes up those prices. I have my costs, I have my employees to pay who are probably being paid better than the employees in Chetumal. I'm paying taxes that the Chetumal merchant probably isn't paying. I'm paying an electricity bill that for sure the Chetumal merchant isn't paying, and so on and so forth. So when you look at it, you need to look at the fact that everything has a cost. We, the business people, need to start talking more about what makes us tick and what makes us who we are. On the same side, I believe that the Ministry of the Public Service is getting ready to go out there and talk about what they're planning, what they're looking to do. And as I said, it's unfair for us to generalize on either side. You have excellent and dedicated public servants out there, and you have very, very good businesses that do really well for their customers out there as well. We just need to get together in our vision.
Yeah.
Now, I want to jump into something because it seems such like a nebulous kind of definition when you say businesses, because you don't know what that encompasses, and people don't necessarily look when we're talking about businesses or what the chamber represents in terms of people who are maybe in the productive sector or in the tourism sector. A lot of it, you know, people still think they're stores that are open on downtown or that kind of. How broad the base is in terms of the representation for the chamber, and how do you engage all of them to meet their needs? Because we've seen the agricultural sector and productive sector come out and talk about some of the reliefs that they would like to see in terms of being able to produce at a lesser cost so that they can export and also compete globally. What's a broad base for that, and your reaction to, you know, different segments actually having different needs, but at the same time all being a part of the business sector?
Yeah, the chamber itself is organized such that we recognize business in 3 specific segments. There's commerce, there's industry, which is agro-productive, people like Marie Sharp or anybody that's producing anything with their own hands, running W Meats, for example, or any of those, agro-productive, productive, going out there, making an item with their own hands. Services is the third, and that deals with the stuff you can't see, insurance, law, all these items that people are providing a service to you. Tourism is the most massive of all service sectors, of the service sector. But between those 3, we tend to cover all the bases in that sort of categorization. Our focus lately has been also to make sure that nobody forgets that small business, what's called MSME in the alphabet soup that we deal with so much, micro, small, and medium enterprises, do not fall through the cracks, because we see it within our own membership that the most vibrant section of our membership, that the baseline, the area for growth within our own membership is micro, small, and medium. So there is a general move even on all sides to try and foster the growth of those sectors. And that's why we've been saying if the government needs to increase efficiencies in terms of encouraging startups and this kind of thing, finance costs, whatever, those are the bases that we use to cover all aspects. But our view is if you make a product or you have a service of any kind and you are earning money for the provision of that product or service, you are in business. If you are a lady making Johnny cakes so that you can sell them and feed your kids every night, if you are a plumber or an electrician or a mechanic, or if you are doing meat pies out of a shop, or you're doing, you notice how it's all food-centric around here, right? Or you have a boutique that you're bringing in clothes and selling it, or anything like that. You're growing stuff and bringing it to market. You are in business. So business people are not this group of folks that are driving fancy cars and whatever. They're everybody who's out there working by their own hands to earn an income and hopefully provide employment in the long run.
Now, we obviously haven't missed the fact that you do have specific recommendations that you're making at this time I want us to be able to discuss those in detail. I don't know where you want to start. We touched on fleet management just a little.
Several aspects. The notion even of basic savings on electricity. When you go into a government office and the ACs are blasting and there's cracks in the windows and the doors are open, and simple things like that can save us loads and loads of money. We've also pointed out to the PM that as an example of something where we don't say cut costs, but we say give us a return on investment, our foreign service. We have embassy outposts in several parts of the world. Use those embassy outposts strategically to bring us back investment. We're not telling you to close Brussels or close Washington. That would be crazy. We're telling you, let's see how we can work with Brussels and Washington to tell them what's needed in terms of investment and have them bring back people that they meet every day, start networking and encouraging investment to come this way. It's something that has to happen much more actively, especially in the backdrop of the Superbond discussions. Things like that. The public should be commenting also on where it sees that cost savings should be achieved. Like I said, fleet management is the most visible one. But in terms of the redeployment of employees, you have some areas that are severely understaffed, but you have some areas where there are people standing around doing nothing. There must be something that can be done there.
I think we'd also like to see a better rollout of information technology. In other governments, in first world countries, it tends to do a lot to streamline processes. And one thing, and I think we kind of touched on this earlier, I think we tend here in Belize to want to cater to a certain kind of demographic especially, and it's like, okay, well, you talk to this one and then you get your thing passed through. All we're trying to say is if you want business to be easy and uniform and you want people to come and invest, the answer is not necessarily to just make it easy for that one person to come in and invest. It's make it easy for everyone, and if it's a good enabling environment and if business is easy to start up, and if the tax laws are very clear, if it's easy to understand what you owe the government and what they owe you, everybody and anybody will invest. Until then, you'll just have this situation where we're making exceptions because our legislature is just kind of crowded, and it's not simple, really, to put it basically. So simple things like that, I think if we could see a bit of revision, restructuring to make it easy for everyone to do business. Kay touched on a really relevant point, which is we're not going to be seeing huge growth from corporate, the corporate side of things. And now the trend worldwide is to small business, which is not to say that it just emerged overnight either. It's been there.
Focusing.
Yeah, it's always been there, growing the whole time. And like you said, small business actually drives every country. But we tend to focus on the corporate because they're big. But really, we need to, like you said, refocus on small business and realize that, hey, instead of bringing in one conglomerate that's going to make, let's say, 300 or 400 jobs, and say, yay, that's nothing in my opinion, 300 or 400 jobs. Why don't we enable 1,000 Belizeans to go hire 2 more Belizeans, and then we have, 3,000 people that now have money. That's more than 300, last time I checked. So I think if we look at that, kind of focus on the small picture, that it'll, then affect the big picture. And that's all we want to see. We want to see a shift in paradigm. We just want to see them care about the people at the bottom who want to use business as a way out. People don't really realize that. It's either I'm going to beg or I'm going to get a job. But at a certain point, you can create your own job. And we have what we call a little brother arm, not arm, but as an organization, the YBTV, Youth Business Trust. And that's kind of what they're trying to do. They're trying to get young entrepreneurs to kind of listen and say, okay, well, look, there's another way. I can't get a job, but I can start my own business. Eventually, I may be able to hire some other people and grow my business, And we need to see that, that independent, free spirit kind of come back out. People want to do things for themselves, kind of own their responsibilities, and not have to report to someone every day.
Now, it's interesting. The recommendations that you've made, I think, are things that just as average citizens we encounter all the time. You see something happen, you'll see a car being used inefficiently, you're going to a government institution and not get the type of service at the speed that you need it to be, and you see how things can be changed. But oftentimes, these complaints have been heard for so many times before, but even more so, nobody likes to have anybody nitpicking or to seem like they're nitpicking as to what they're doing wrong. How do you approach this with the government in terms of being able to really have them consider it as a way of saving and being able to put back for better use? It's a great relationship.
Well, no, the conversation has to occur. There's no getting around it. A lot of the times we all tend to be more tactful than we believe we are, and sometimes too tactful. But a lot of the times it's a matter of saying, look, I know everybody complains about this and this and this. Here's how you can do it better. It's not so much what we like to say about gripe. It's not so much the griping, bring the solutions. If everybody has the problem, everybody knows what the problems are, the thing is to start suggesting that do it this way, you know, and definitely there is as Carlo said, there has to be a recognition that both sides could do better, and there is a more honest conversation when you start off from that point of view and you say, I know we can do better, here's how you can do better, here's how I can do better. You tell me how I can do better and I won't resent you, and let's work on both being better so that you know we can really pull this off, because we have no choice.
Now one of the things I want to do is actually take a little step back, because we've been talking about the way forward, but obviously to understand this issue and what got us here, we've not taken a look back at what we've been practicing. Over decades, as you rightly said, this super bond, it did not just spring up on us. It's an accumulation of years of doing things inefficiently in so many ways. Now, how much of that is a part of the conversation to look at, you know, what practices simply will not continue to work for us moving forward, but so that we get an understanding of what we need to do and why. You know, when you're talking about certain reforms, whether it's fleet management or other excesses that may exist, contract workers, that everybody is on the same page, working forward and understanding that we got to this point because of these factors, which could have been mitigated a long time ago.
I think in that, William, one of the biggest things that we've asked for in our letter regarding the budget was that there no longer be any deficit budgeting. Everybody talks about primary surplus or whatever, but for us, the issue that you always have to borrow to cover a certain gap in the budget has led us to where we are today. And if we continue to do it after we've renegotiated the super bond, guess what? Down the road, we'll be back there again, as Marlene mentioned. If every year you have to, as a government, balance the budget, a lot of things will automatically follow. But if every year you do the budget and you say, well, I've got 20 million left over that I've got to cover, so I'll borrow it from some of our good friends and allies out there, then there's no year where there's an incentive to trim that fat we mentioned. So if we would say, all right, here's the line in the sand, as of now, as of the 2012 budget, 2012-2013 budget, there will henceforth be no more deficit budgeting. They're gonna have to, by definition, look for ways to cut the fat. From our point of view as well, it means that things are a little bit more predictable, because you're not gonna have added debt. The pressures for taxation do come into play, but at some point, our stand there has always been twofold. It's been, you need to cut down to full efficiency before you tell us you need more taxes, and also that go catch those who are evading. Evading taxes is a huge part of what's happening in many sections of the economy. So go make sure everybody's paying their fair share before you come back to that small and diminishing core who's paying for everybody else's obligations. That's in terms of building efficiency, starting to squeeze it. In terms of our end of things, we simply need to do what we do, but do it better. In terms of our efficiencies and recognizing that we only have ourselves to depend on. One of the things that we tend not to think of is, as a productive sector or a production-oriented country, which we must become, right now we have a balance where our imports outweigh our exports. There is an imbalance there. At the moment, we are going to have to shift that, and we're going to have to stop worrying about import substitution and focus more on exporting. 370,000 people cannot consume enough that we produce to give us an income. It has to be that we start to look at markets beyond our borders as an automatic factor in business. You have, and they are to be admired, you have several businesses that are exporting and doing very well. It took them a lot of work to get where they are today, but now they're thriving and they're doing extremely well. There needs to be a mentality that the moment I start a business, I get all the assistance I need to start that business quickly and efficiently and get ramped up at top speed. But at the same time, I do my part by saying, hey, I'm going to operate within Belize's borders for the first 5 years, and once I get up and running, I'm going to start to export. So this is what I'm going to produce in order to export. And beginning to realize that we can use markets right around us. Central America's markets are huge. And just start to say, we shall change our way of thinking in that respect.
And to build on that quickly, we always think of export as product oriented, but we can export our skills and our talents, you know. And I tell people all the time, if I had to just consider Belize as a market, you know, I wouldn't make enough money. To me personally, I mean, I always figure it's a global economy. Globalization is this big buzzword nowadays, and it's so right. I mean, when you're thinking about who needs what, you're thinking, okay, over there in Asia, they need a whole bunch of stuff. I can satisfy a market over there, you know. So it's not just about Belize. Belize is too small to me for us to really thrive. It's only 300 odd something, officially at least, you know, and they don't have the purchasing power. We need to kind of look, like you said, and right around us, we have like 3 large nations right there bordering us that are very close. Well, not really, well, 2, but you know, close behind is like another one. But you know, it's right there, and they do have the population and they do have the money. And if we can be competitive, we can export not just, you know, materials, products, foodstuffs and whatnot, but we can also export skills, services, talent. You know, so.
But how we've been blowing that trumpet for a long time, right? We've been talking about our strategic position, and yet we have not taken any kind of steps to exploit it. When you spoke earlier about cultural shifts and mental shifts and paradigm shifts, what's holding us back in terms of, from a business perspective, to make those leaps?
I think that there needs to be a more positive way of thinking for a couple of things. On the actual side, cost of financing is a huge issue for us, and we've been bringing it up everywhere we can, and the government understands it. The issue is how to conquer it. But cost of financing is a huge issue. If I want to export, I want to touch on what Carlo said about services in a minute, but if I want to export what I'm producing, be it, let's say, jams, a special banana jam or something, I'm going to have to borrow money to produce enough to be able to supply the demand that I have, be it a container load or 100 cases or whatever. That's probably more than my personal resources can allow. So if I have something like 12 or 14% interest on the loan that I'm getting, because it's not a standard export loan, it's, you know, I'm borrowing on everything I own, it gets a little...
Which takes up the cost.
It takes up the cost. It gets a little bit onerous on me, and I'm not competitive in the market that I'm trying to sell to. So I'm held back by my cost factors. Also, it was more expensive for me to produce. Again, we're back to the electricity bills, et cetera, et cetera.
And even quality, because if you look at the situation with the cows in Mexico, that was one of the challenges we had here.
We had to meet a whole lot of requirements there. If you're going to export to the US or to Europe, you have to have HACCP or USDA certification if you're going to do food, for example. If you're going to do alcohol, you have to meet certain labeling requirements. There's always, no country is going to say, oh, send it, it's all right. Everybody's going to have rules. So those rules require a certain degree of investment and expenditure, which is why you do want to get strong locally before you can go over the border, and that does take time. But there also is that cost factor that you have to conquer. Hopefully you're not paying duty on your packaging, so it's a little bit cheaper. Hopefully you're running very, very efficient equipment, not some surplus stuff that you bought at an auction because that's what you could afford. So when it comes to goods production, there are a lot of hurdles to cross. but a lot of the hurdles also are involved with, we tend to be intimidated by the larger markets. We tend to think, Guatemala, they, you know, and in the case of Mexico, the notion was, we're going to do it, we're going to go ahead, we're going to jump all these hurdles, and it's taken them years, but look, there is a result. So there has to be a determination that it's not easy, but it's worth it.
But with small businesses specifically, is it the need for somebody to facilitate the communication and opening up the doors with our neighbors? Is that where you would like to see some government assistance?
It is helpful. There is there's Beltrade, there's the marketing and development, the Belize marketing organization, sorry, marketing board as was once known. These are organizations that theoretically, well, Beltrade is already structured to go out there and do trade shows and push our products in that respect. But the BMDC, sorry, I'm back to the proper acronym now. Belize Marketing and Development Corporation should, we think, be restructured in such a way that it pulls together everything that we have that's export worthy, being first level agriculture, fresh produce, or preserved items, value added items, whatever, that they be able to aggregate all of that. Imagine if you're producing jam and you're producing jam and Carlo's producing jam, perhaps we can do a Belize label and get it out there.
Yeah.
So sometimes we're back to that working together. It requires a great deal of working together. And then yes, if you have an advocate in the public sector that says, all right, Belize products are going to get out and that's what we do, it would help tremendously. And I think the BMDC is the perfect vehicle for that.
Now, you were speaking about the service industry specifically, and that's something that we don't think about very often. Now, what skills and talents we have and how we can utilize that. I don't have to make banana jams. I wouldn't know where to start. But I might have something that's marketable somewhere else.
Right. The beauty of service industry, services as they exist right now is we have locally skilled professionals, lawyers, architects, engineers, etc., who now have the freedom to move within CARICOM at the very least, and in some cases out as far as Europe, to sell their skills. So you can have an architect here sitting on a computer designing a house for somebody in St. Kitts. And that allows you not, you know, you're dealing across the borders, and if you're lucky and you do well enough, all of a sudden you have a firm of 10 people working for you, and they're working all over the Caribbean and so on and so forth, and it snowballs. There's also the notion that it's the perfect vehicle for young entrepreneurs who are one person, not much resources. You can be building websites for people in England, or I'm picking English-speaking countries, but if you're Spanish-speaking, your world just opened a bit more. You could be doing so much work just sitting in a room on a computer without much investment on your part, except your own skills and your own learning capabilities. As Carlo said, the world is open to you now because of the internet. The issue there, of course, is bandwidth connections. We had that discussion come up in the media the other day about the fact that our bandwidth at, say, 2 megs is difficult for a young entrepreneur to afford, and also not enough bandwidth to really do the work that needs to be done. I gather there's an answer for that, but in the meantime, it is an avenue for entrepreneurship that we really need to look at and figure out ways to break down those obstacles.
I like to use the example of India, actually, which was service-oriented. Over the last couple of decades, you know, accounting, for instance, has exploded. IT as well, which, like you said, is a very easily exportable commodity, if you want to call it that. It's a service, but it's something that you can do from anywhere. I actually know a company here in Belize that is selling software to another company in Miami, for instance, because they understand the value of these things. And, you know, being in Belize, certain things like our cost of living is lower. So we can afford to be doing maybe a little bit more work for a little bit less. At the same time, if you have a value proposition, you know, they'll bite, you know. So once you have a quality product, in my opinion, you market yourself well, you have access to those markets, there's no reason why you shouldn't be doing business. And, you know, and it's not just about accounting or IT. There's a website, for instance, called, I think, Your Man in India, and it's like a personal assistant in India. You can say, hey, I want you to, you know, make my schedule for today. And it's like $5 an hour or something like that, you know, or less. You know, so you can get these tasks done. I mean, if you be creative about it and you don't, you can look, there's all kinds of, you know, niches. And I think that's the one thing that we don't look at. We all look at the big markets and say, well, how do I penetrate the big market? It's impossible. There's so many barriers to entry. Of course there are. It's a big market. You look at the small ones, the ones you can penetrate easily that have low barriers, and you kind of try and get in there, make a foothold, you know, make yourself a little empire, essentially, you know.
Now, pulling back to what we started, going full circle, back to the super bond. At this point, what would you say to the average citizen in terms of their involvement in the discussion? And is it highbrow discussion that, you know, people should not be engaged or worried about because government is going to do what government will do anyway, and you have no control?
Just before that, you know, that you just opened up something there. I know that obviously the opposition has been speaking about the need for consultation during the negotiation process. Do you feel the same way?
To a point.
Okay.
I don't think that there should be absolute silence in that information is created in a vacuum. If people don't know what's going on, they'll fill in their own blanks, and panic will become the order of the day. So there needs to be information sharing. We 300,000 people all can't be in the room, and I think we need to respect that there are some things that need to be held back. As far as the discussions go, I think William touched on something that's very important. A lot of people think, ooh, this discussion of coupon rate and da-da-da-da is above me, and that's for the big men to talk about. And no, it's a very, very large-scale version of sitting with your banker and confirming to him, convincing him that, listen, I can't pay my bills right now. I can pay this much, but not this much. Now, no banker worth his salt is just going to go, okay, Marlene, you're good. He's going to fight to collect what he's collecting now, and he's going to start from a position of, you're trying to pull the wool over my eyes. It is important that the renegotiating team and the government itself convince them through all the means that, no, this is really what we have to do. And we're doing it, we're coming to you proactively because we're not in trouble yet, but we're getting there. The view is that when the super bond was created, it was created with a schedule of interest rates that were meant for a time of growth that is no longer occurring, and this is worldwide. So you were talking interest rates that were, well, now we're at 8.5%. There's nowhere in the world, I think, that can sustain 8.5%, except maybe China, if they were in debt. We have 2 to 3% growth per year. When they talk about GDP growth and everything, it means that every year our economy is producing 2 to 3% more than it produced last year. Not much growth, and certainly not enough to cover 8.5% without eventually getting itself into trouble. I think the average Belizean needs to, everybody out there, every citizen, and if you shop in our stores, you are a taxpayer. So every tax-paying citizen needs to keep close to the discussions that are occurring and make sure that, yes, while we're paying our bills, we make sure that we do it in a way that doesn't break the bank. We don't end up with your children or grandchildren having to pay onerous bills because we just passed the buck to the next generation. We really have to tackle it, and beyond that, we have to look beyond it such that, okay, the discussions go well, our goals are achieved, we have some breathing room. The breathing room is meant so that we begin to work on growth, and we need to get serious about economic growth, all of us. All of us have to get to work and find some way to help grow the economy, because everything I do, you do, Carlo does, goes into that number that talks about economic growth. So if you want it to go from 2 to 3% on up to 6-7%, each and every one of us makes a difference in that.
Now, just before we wrap, the other thing, because while you were speaking just now, you triggered something else in my mind's eye, and that's the whole idea that besides turning the super bond into a giant monster that we can't seem to be David for, we're also looking at the entire way that the public perception is when it comes to foreign investment, and that foreign investors come and they're going to rape you and take everything anyway. So why make a pitch to actually try and attract more foreign investments.
That's a good point. And before you give the before you give the intellectual answer, I will say that you're quite right in that we say that these people come in and they rape us, but guess what? It's your very exact leaders that go out there and give them these same incentives to do these things that you then complain about. So it's not like they're just coming in and exploiting things that exist. They get incentives that aren't there. We're just saying, hey, let's make the whole landscape level. Let's make it a level playing field, and the little guy on the street can compete with the guy coming in, from Sweden. And now you can take it over.
What he said. No, I think I would love to see a country in the world that doesn't think it needs foreign investment seriously. I mean, Cuba has European investment and calls itself a closed economy or whatever. China, look at China. China is a massive monster because of the foreign investment it has attracted. The thing is not to say we don't need no foreign we. The thing is to say we want people to come in who are credible investors, who will play by our rules, and then we play by our rules as well. And we set out those rules in such a way, as Carlo said, that the playing field is level, and the playing field it encourages growth and investment. Why is it that we're better than everybody else, that we don't need foreign investment when Japan wants it, the US wants it? These are the most massive economies in the world, and they're saying, no, come to me. Everybody can use foreign investment. The key is to make sure that when they come in, they are not the sort that will take everything you have and leave only scorched earth behind. You set the rules, you have them abide by the rules, and you make sure that they thrive as well as you thriving.
And that's where the responsibility on the citizens come in. An active citizenry will pay attention when these agreements are being made and stop you and say, it's not going to happen. But we're yet to see that take place. But of course, we hope conversations like these will be able to foster that sense of awareness in the wider public. And I'm really grateful that you guys were able to join us this morning and to talk about the super bond issue, but most importantly, in looking forward and some of the things that we need to deal with now as we continue. Right?
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you both.
We're going to go ahead now and take our final break, and when we come back, we'll have our wrap up, so stay tuned.
When you dial the Crime Stoppers Belize toll-free hotline 0800-922-8477,
Crime Stoppers,
the call is answered by a trained international operator. Because each caller is anonymous, you are then given a code. Your tip or information about a crime is totally confidential. The international operator then contacts Crime Stoppers Belize, who relays the information to the relevant authorities, like the police, immigration, customs, or human services department. Crime Stoppers Belize is a non-governmental and not-for-profit organization. A civilian board of directors oversees the operation of the program. The board sets policies and strategies and raises funds for rewards and administrative costs. Crime Stoppers Belize exists to give citizens a safe, anonymous alternative to report crime.
If you have information about a crime, please call Crime Stoppers Belize hotline 0800-922-8477. If your tip is successful, you can collect and reward and remain anonymous.
Help us make Belize a safer place.
Get ready for Travelers Cocktail Fridays. Join us as we learn how to mix unique local drinks with a sensational taste. Can you handle the Travelers Cocktail experience? Find out on Open Your Eyes, this Friday, only on Channel 5.
Great Belize Television, winner of 2 Caribbean Broadcasting Union's 2012 awards for Economy and Finance and Youth and Children's Issues.
BB Mobile Banking Service, available from the Belize Bank, allows you to access your Belize Bank accounts via your mobile phone.
I used to make several trips to the bank, which cost a lot. But now that I've signed up for Belize Bank Mobile, it saves me time and money.
Receive alerts and notifications on salary deposits, receive balance and mini statement inquiries, transfer money between accounts, pay bills, including your Belize Bank credit cards, loan, and credit card due dates, ATM and debit card transactions, and much more. Signing up for this convenient service is easy. Visit us online at www.belizebank.com or a Belize Bank branch near you. Some conditions apply. BB Mobile, banking anytime, anywhere.
And welcome back.
Very important discussion there on Superbond, looking at it from all different sides and of course trying to figure out the best way forward. And what became abundantly clear for me was the fact that we definitely need to have a public discussion on these issues in terms of working the way forward, and not negating the fact that we can't deny the history of how we got to this point. I like the fact that there's been call from certain quarters, simply, and Kay reinforced it today, about moving forward with a balanced budget. And that is a key start. And where do we go, and how do we trim excesses and trim the extra fat as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that there's a lot of food for thought that they have been able to share with us this morning. The conversation will continue without a doubt, so we'll keep you all posted. But that's all the time we have for today. Remember, if you want to contact us, you can contact us at OYE@channel5belize.com, Marlene_OYE at channel5belize.com.
And William_OYE@channel5belize.com. Have a great day, everybody. And be sure to join us tomorrow morning at 6:30 when you open your eyes to start your morning right. Until then, take care.
Open Your Eyes was brought to you by the Belize Bank, our country, your bank, and Smart, bringing people together.